Today is day 2 of Thyroid Week. So this whole week, as you all know, my students know, and I've told Andrea, is all about the thyroid. We've had yesterday, we had Stacey Robbins on. We have Shannon Garrett on Thursday. Everybody's really excited. So today we have Andrea Nakayama, which I reached out to because I've been following you for quite some time now and am just always uber impressed with everything that you offer to people. Andrea is a functional medicine nutritionist and educator, leading clients, students, and practitioners around the world in a revolution focused on reclaiming ownership over our own health. Her passion for food as personalized medicine, I love that, personalized medicine, was born from the loss of her young husband to a brain tumor, which made me cry when I read your story. I want you to tell us a little about that in a moment, in 2002. She is the founder of Replenish PDX and Holistic Nutrition Lab, co-founder of the Hashimoto's Institute, and creator of her own Girl's Guide to Hashimoto's, The Hashi Companion. Andrea is regularly consulted as a nutrition expert for the toughest clinical cases in the practice of many world-renowned doctors. Her unique ability to make the very complex easily digestible is one of the many factors that led Andrea to being honored with the 2015 Impact Award, awesome, and 2016 Service Award from the National Association of Nutrition Professionals. Very impressive, and I want to talk a little bit about the Girl's Guide to Hashimoto's as we go along. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here. So excited to have you talking about the thyroid and sharing your knowledge today.
So excited to be here.
Yeah,
thank you.
About your story.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that introduction, and I'm really excited to be here with you and your whole community. And I too have health coach training along with everything else, so I really want to speak into what we as health coaches can do to be making a difference in even the most complex cases. And thyroid and Hashimoto's cases can be very complex, so I want to talk into that today with everybody and really explore your questions. My story, I think, like many of us in the field, started with my own health crisis. As you said, it wasn't actually my health crisis, it was my husband's health crisis, which I saw as my own crisis. I think we all do when our beloved, anybody in our family, is impacted with a health issue. So my husband, Isamu, was diagnosed with a glioblastoma multiforme. That's a grade 4 brain tumor when I was 7 weeks pregnant with our son Gilbert back in 2000, in April of 2000. He was given about 6 months to live, and I just kicked into high gear. That was really my boot camp in nutrition at a new level. So I actually had a completely different career. I worked in book publishing, very high-end book publishing. I had a very successful career, but I was a foodie. So I was always cooking and going to the farmer's market and doing cleanses. And when he was diagnosed, he went to the medical library and started researching every protocol that he could do, because he was getting calls as a young man from every doctor around the country with what they wanted to try on him. And I started thinking, what else do we do? Do we need acupuncture? Do we need food as medicine? What do we do? And I dove into nutrition in a whole new way. So Isamu lived, his prognosis was 6 months. He lived just under 2.5 years. So he did get some good time with our son. He died in July of 2002. And it's been a journey ever since then. It took me a little while to realize this was my calling, that in some ways, if I couldn't save his life, how could I impact the lives of so many more people? I'm so grateful to do the work that I do, to carry his name forward, and to be part of the evolution of medicine. I really, truly believe that we have a special place in this evolution that is being bypassed by a lot of people, and it's very necessary. And I'm happy to talk more into that if we get to it today.
Awesome. Awesome. I was listening to an interview with Kelly Brogan today, and it was really inspiring because she was saying, she was telling Sean Croxton that, we thought that this was this functional medicine movement, and what we're all doing as coaches and teachers and practitioners, was, you know, in the future. And she said, I have a feeling like it's right there under the surface, and I anticipate something huge in the next year happening. And it just gave me goosebumps, because we can finally see this, this movement. It's coming to fruition. It's almost like no one can stop us kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and I love Kelly. She's a good friend, and she really does look at the sociological aspects of what's happening. And my big call to action is really that the health coach has to step up. Functional medicine doctors and the people that run the Institute of Functional Medicine are talking to me about the fact that functional medicine as a practice is not going to make it. It's going to fail without what I call the associate functional practitioner. And that's really where I'm, you know, my call to action is to the health coach to step up and become that associate functional medicine practitioner, because nobody else is. And it's not just sexy what they're doing. What's super sexy is what the patient is doing. And that's where we come in, because we really can act as educators for the patient. So that movement, as much as we look at it in awe, it cannot survive without us. We really need to step up. And that's my call to action to every health coach out there.
Oh, I love to hear that, because there's so much. One of the things that I try to teach in my courses too, and I call it my passion boot. Like, I have my boot on that's full of passion, and when doubt or fear creeps in, I like to stomp it to the ground. There is so much fear and doubt coming in with coaches that are coming out of some of these schools, because they haven't been given, you know, the tools to do what they need to do. Not only that, but, you know, with all of this legal stuff we've got going on now, you know, I mean, you're hearing about it too, how some coaches are getting turned in by the health department and whatnot. So I'm glad to hear you, like, just, you know, give that spark of hope to us again, because I'm all about it. I've been coaching for over 6 years, and I love it, and you can't make me stop, because I know that there's a safe way to do this, and it's important work.
There's absolutely a safe way to do this, and this is really what I teach in Holistic Nutrition Lab, and I'll give everybody a way to just learn more about that later on in our time together. But it really is about positioning yourself as an educator. There's nothing wrong with what we do. We have to work within our scope of practice, but there is room to really push that scope of practice. And I need to see more coaches doing it. I'm about creating an army that can associate ourselves with those functional medicine practitioners and with the functional medicine movement. And there needs to be a bridge. There's too much of a divide, and that divide isn't okay with me. And that divide is hurting the patient. So we really need to step up, and stepping up is maybe different than what we think it looks like.
I agree. I always say that I bridge the gap between the experts and the health coaches and bring them together. It's like a triage of care: the patient, the doctor, the health coach, right?
Yes.
So with that said, let's talk about the thyroid. Let's talk about why it's so important that coaches have an intimate understanding of how important the thyroid is, what it is, and all of that. I mean, like, I've been studying that gland for 5 years because of my own story, but you're the expert on that. And my job is to bring the experts to the coaches. So why don't we go ahead and do your screen share now, and let's do that. Let's give us a lesson on the thyroid. We're going to talk a little bit about physiology, right?
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about physiology. And the thing that I really want to contextualize for everybody is that we can talk about the thyroid gland till the cows come home. But the thyroid does not exist in a vacuum. And it's really important that we understand that, because as health coaches, what I like to posit is that we are working with the environment within. It is not our job to be the doctor and to address the thyroid specifically. It is our job to influence the entire environment within. And in doing so, we really become the epigenetic masters. So just to back up there, you know, our gene expression, our mitochondrial expression, all these things that we hear the doctors talking about, all of that cellular expression is influenced by the environment within, which is influenced by the environment around us. So whatever we put into our bodies, that's the food we eat, has a huge impact on that environment within. So I just want to really presence for everybody that when we're looking at the thyroid in particular, it does not exist in a vacuum. If you're trying to address thyroid care, you really need to look at the entire person and their entire physiology. You're going to get a little cat action here.
Awesome.
That's Willow. So when we think about the thyroid, we want to really contextualize also that it's one of our endocrine organs. And I like to think of the endocrine system as a sort of pyramid that we're thinking into, because the endocrine organs communicate with each other. There's a lot of chemistry that's happening when we're talking about hormones. And that chemistry is also impacted by our immune system. So our tearing up the couch. So the thyroid hormone is impacted most particularly by the control center, which happens in the brain. So you see there that there's the hypothalamus and the pituitary, which are part of the thyroid axis. We have the HPT axis. Hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid axis. And that's a triangle, a feedback loop that's either in the positive feedback or the negative feedback. And we have to always be thinking about the brain. Now, just to back up, the brain, as I like to teach in the digestive intensive, is highly impacted by the function of the gut. It's connected by the biggest nerve in the body, the vagus nerve, and there are many similarities between the permeability that we have in the gut that we think of as leaky gut and the permeability that we have in the blood-brain barrier. Very similar actions happening there. So if one is leaky or permeable, so is the other. So the brain, whether it's from a structural perspective or a physiological perspective, is a huge part of our thyroid function. What that means is that in collecting somebody's history, you want to know their history with any mental health issues. You want to know their history with any structural issues, car accidents, bonks on the head, histories playing soccer or volleyball or football. You want to understand what's going on in the brain. So that HPT axis has to do with the production of the hormones. The hypothalamus produces a hormone called TRH. That's the thyrotropin releasing hormone. That then travels through the portal blood vein to the pituitary, also in the brain, to produce the TSH, the thyroid stimulating hormone that we hear so much about. The thyroid stimulating hormone has to travel to the thyroid gland located in your throat region to produce two hormones, T4 and T3 are the two hormones. The primary hormone that the thyroid gland produces is the T4. That's a tyrosine molecule with 4 iodine molecules on it. That needs to be converted to the active thyroid hormone, which is T3, which is that tyrosine molecule with one of those iodine molecules removed through a process that actually happens through enzymes in the gut that impacts that ability to remove one of those iodine molecules. The form we want to be looking at for those thyroid hormones is the free form when we're looking at lab reports, because it's not bound to a protein and therefore not usable. So thyroid hormone, that free T3, so free, it's not bound to a hormone, is used in almost every cell in the body. It's impacting our metabolism, which impacts our ability to eliminate. So when somebody's constipated, do we want to be seeing if they're hypothyroid, sluggish all the way through? We want to be making associations and shift the environment within, right? So all of this needs to be happening for thyroid hormones to be produced. So I'm going to go ahead and share a different document with you. These are the factors that affect thyroid function. But before I do, Carmen, any questions there? Anything that it would be helpful for me to reiterate there?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think maybe just a little bit more of the layman's terms, since this might be a little bit introductory for people.
Okay.
Just kind of making, helping them to understand when you talk about the T4, that needs to be turned into the so-called fuel of T3, which is what really drives the metabolism, right? And
Yep.
And what can inhibit that process in the gut: leaky gut, slow thyroid, right? So
Yes.
maybe a little bit more of the, some of the layman's terms. So
Sure.
yeah, I'm a big visual person and analogy kind of girl. So
Yeah.
that might be helpful. Yeah, but I have
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
document too from signing up for one of your newsletters or something. I love this
Great.
document. It's great.
Yeah, this really helps. And there's a second part to this. So, and, feel free in Zoom to type in your questions or ask for clarifications here. So I want you to think about a triangle here in terms of the hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid. It's going into an axis that also, if there's too much thyroid hormone, will start to inhibit the production of the thyrotropin releasing hormone. So they're in a feedback loop that is a triangle, constantly talking to each other. So that's why we want to look at the whole picture when we're looking at somebody's thyroid. We don't want to play target practice. We want to look at the entire picture. And I have another resource that'll help you to do this a little bit more. When we're thinking about hypothyroidism, most of it, people are going to say 95 to 98% of hypothyroidism is autoimmune in nature, is Hashimoto's. That's what I have. Is that what you have too, Carmen?
Yep.
Yeah, so we have Hashimoto's. That's when there's an autoimmune attack. So your own blood cells are attacking that thyroid tissue, and you see that thyroid gland at the top. So you've basically trained an army over your lifetime, not with your knowing it, but you've trained an army of immune cells to start attacking that thyroid gland, the tissues in that thyroid gland, so that they can't do their job. And if that's the case, the issue with the thyroid isn't about the thyroid gland itself, it's about the immune system, which is about the digestive system. We have to be thinking in a complex system of the body. So really thinking about that triangle is important, knowing that you're considering the brain, knowing that you're considering the gut, and that there's a system of communication that happens. When we're talking about hormones, we're always talking about communication. It's chemical reactions that are happening in relationship to each other. So that's really where we want to be thinking about, how do we not play target practice? I have a problem with my thyroid, but say, what does that problem mean? And how do we start to untangle it and address it? And the best way to do that, if you don't understand thyroid physiology, is with the gut.
Yeah.
And with cleaning up the environment and the way person is sleeping and their blood sugar management. It's not rocket science, even though it might sound like it from what I'm talking about. It is impacted by the entire environment. So I want to talk a little bit about what we see here, but I also want to check in, because I know I don't know what level we're at. I want to make sure I'm meeting people's needs.
Very good. You're doing that's very good. It's completely understandable. And one of the things I would love for you to kind of touch on, when people talk about the immune system, a lot of people don't understand that the immune system is in the gut. So when you're talking about, it's not about the thyroid, I always think about the thyroid as kind of the victim of all this, like this poor little thing that's like, stop, and the world around it is just coming down on it, right? So the immune system, is it accurate to say that 80% of the immune system is in the gut, or what would you say about the percentage of that?
Yeah, it's about 70 to 80% of the immune system. The part of the immune system that is attacking the thyroid are the antibody class called IgG antibodies. So there are 5 different kinds of antibodies The primary antibody in the gut are IgA antibodies. So we may all be familiar with IgE antibodies. Those are true allergies. The IgGs are what we might see elevated with sensitivities. The IgA is in the gut. That's really impacted when somebody has celiac disease. IgM, we're going to see elevated with something like Epstein-Barr virus. And the IgD, we don't see that much. But there's 5 antibodies, and there's 3 parts of your immune system. There's the part that's like the exterior, like your skin. You know, your body just works for you to protect it from invaders. Then there's what we call the innate immune system. That's the part where your body just also goes to work internally for you. And then there's the adaptive immune system. The adaptive immune system is the part that we train. When I said you've been training your body to attack your thyroid without even knowing it, the adaptive immune system is the one that's as unique to you as your fingerprint, as your microbiome, super unique to you. It responds in a very specific way because you've trained it with your immunizations, with your exposures, with having the chicken pox or not, you know, whatever you've been exposed to, you've trained that army of those 5 antibodies, which are part of your adaptive immune system. Adaptive, or you might hear it referred to as acquired. So those IgA antibodies that are part of your adaptive immune system are in your gut. There's a lot of those. And that's what we talk about when we talk about the guts, the role of the gut in immunity.
Okay. Mary Louise I'm going to go ahead and field these as they pop up so you don't have to worry
please.
about the distraction, is asking what was the first part of the immune system before innate and adaptive?
We just think of that. Sometimes they're just thought of as innate or adaptive, but the innate also includes sort of the first line of defense, which is your skin. So your skin is protecting things from coming in. And I'd like to say you have skin on the inside. You also have on the outside, you also have skin on the inside. So if we think of the digestive system, it's like the hole in a donut, right? So it is its own skin, mouth to anus, on the inside of your body. So you have food and substances, sometimes pathogens, moving through that skin, and it's the job of that skin to protect anything that shouldn't be going into the bloodstream from going in, just as this skin protects anything from getting outside into our bloodstream. Make sense?
Right. Yep, good. That's a good analogy, yes. Lisa's asking, is IgA in the gut the same as IgA?
Yes, the secretory IgA is one of the types of the IgA. There's different types of IgA and there's different ways to measure it. But yes, the SIgA is your secretory IgA.
Yeah, mine's low, I just found out.
Yeah, those are the things we want to look at. So interesting here, you know, not to get carried away, but we may be familiar, like through Dr. Tom O'Brien's work, of the Cyrex testing. If your antibodies measure low, Cyrex testing will show false negatives because it's totally based on your antibody production. So if antibody production is low, we don't want to go get further testing that's expensive, that's going to potentially be a false negative for us.
That's a good point. And one of the things that I've dealt with my own clients over the years, like I've told my students, I've become like a magnet for people with thyroid problems, right? Over the years, everybody that I've worked with, almost 85 to 90% have a thyroid problem. Well, an immune system problem, really. But you know, one of the things that people would tell me is, well, I had my antibodies tested and my doctor says they're negative, so there's nothing wrong. And so I did a little bit of work on, researching that, because I'm like, well, you have every symptom and sign of having an immune system disorder of the thyroid. So I looked at, Datis Karazian's work a couple of years ago, and he said sometimes the immune system is not strong enough to produce those antibodies, which I thought was really interesting, but it was a good solid piece for me to be able to share with people, to say, listen, just because the blood work says this, you have all the signs of this, take this to your doctor and talk to him about it a little bit further.
Yeah, so, you know, some of my training is through Datis, and he says if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. The
Right.
other thing that I like to teach my students to do is to back it up. That's a term we always use. So we're backing it up to the gut, we're backing it up to the brain. We're also backing up what we're looking at in terms of testing. So I don't grant people the ability to do tests, but I teach them how to read and look at the tests that are applicable to what we're talking about. So we want to look at lymphocyte production, because if your lymphocyte production is low, you're likely to have low antibody production. And those are things we need to consider. If your overall white blood cell function is low, then those lymphocytes might be lower than they need to be. Then those antibodies are going to be lower than they want to be. This is the lens that if we're that functional associate practitioner, we can really start to think into what does this whole picture look like? What are the clues we have? We can't diagnose, we cannot prescribe, we cannot heal, but we can be detectives and we can be educators. I can never say to a client, you have Hashimoto's, even though I'm a Hashimoto's expert and I teach other practitioners how to work with Hashimoto's. Not my job to say that.
Right.
I can say, this looks like Hashimoto's, and let me tell you why. So let's talk to your doctor, right? And a lot of times I'm in a fortunate position that those doctors are going to listen to me. But what I like to teach coaches is, how do you get to the doctors to listen to you? How do you bridge that gap? Because it's important that we do it. They can't do everything. They know they can't do everything. And the way we start to reverse those antibodies is by looking at the leaky gut, by dealing with digestion, by dealing with blood sugar. So there's two ways in that I want a presence for dealing with the thyroid. One is backing it up to the gut. So really thinking about, what do we need to do digestively? I like to say that, like, if someone's not pooping and sleeping, I can't even move forward. Like, don't pretend to talk about the thyroid if they're not pooping or sleeping. Period, the end. Like, not an issue. So back it up, deal with what's important, what's happening digestively, and how do we think about the gut first and foremost, because that impacts the environment. So what are they eating? How are they digesting it? That. Then if we come at it from the hormone, back it up, the thyroid exists in that cascade that I was talking about, not this one, but the cascade of hormones that we were talking about when we were looking at the constellation. So for me, blood sugar management is number one when we're talking about hormones. It goes blood sugar and insulin, and then cortisol, and then thyroid, and then sex hormones. And I can tell you that they're likely all out of balance when you see the thyroid out of balance.
They are. Yes. I'm a walking example.
Yes.
When I got back from Mindshare, I just wasn't feeling well. And I went and I was like, it's about that time of the year to have everything tested. And I do a whole thing. I mean, I do pages of labs just every year, once a year. And my insulin came in low, which some of the people on Mindshare had said, you eat a really low carb diet. So I'm not surprised at that. But then I got the C-peptide back, and my pancreas is kind of slow, and my cortisol is low, and everything you just said. You just said. The good thing is that my thyroid is still within its spot, because I caught it and I'm managing it. But you're right on it. You're right on it. It was really interesting to read, what you had said today about your blood sugar email. I read your blood sugar email. Because my blood sugar, I was having hypoglycemic responses to, like, eating a banana.
Right.
Without almond butter on it. I had a banana, and not even 20 minutes later, my blood sugar was 65.
Right.
All during that time. So I'm literally the person you can talk about me if you want to, because that is it.
So that blood sugar going to 65, it's going high because of the banana, and your body's just sucking it up, especially because it's not getting necessarily a lot of carbs or sugars. So it's taking it really fast, and then you're tanking. So that swinging that happens in relation to how we eat is really stressful on the body. We think of stress as an external thing, and really stress, when you have leaky gut, when you have cortisol imbalances, when you have antibody production, that's stress. That's the stress we need to be calming down as well. So my tactic when it comes to Hashimoto's is always addressing the environment, because the antibody production will change. And by environment, I mean internal environment. We forget, we get really, like I have to eliminate all the plastics, and we do all that, clean our beauty products. That's all important too, but we got to clean up what we eat and what that means for each individual that you're helping.
Yeah, I agree. And this is important too. I wanted to make this point too, is that I've been studying this for years, and I've been on it with my health for years. But here's the thing: life happens to us. And so when we are educated about this kind of thing, we are learning, what you're sharing with us. I knew immediately, I'm like, okay, I'm having a reactive hypoglycemic response, probably because I haven't been sleeping. I'm also in menopause. I was able to sift through, make sense, ask for the right labs, immediately get back on track with as far as food, sleep, and everything. And I stopped it rather quickly.
Absolutely.
And so we can teach our clients these steps, empowering them to totally understand how this is happening to them, so that they don't have to reach out to a doctor or a health coach every time something happens to them.
Yeah, right? We really want to empower the individual, and I believe that comes down to educating, and nobody in any state can tell you that you cannot educate. Or in any country, you can be an educator. You are allowed to be an educator. You can educate about what you know. And it's not about protocol. It really is about understanding the individual and putting on a detective hat and helping them to put their own detective hat on. I like to call this nonviolent communication with self, because it means we're listening in to ourselves.
Yes.
What happens for me, you came back from Mindshare and you said something's not quite right. Right? As soon as I start feeling fatigued, which is, how it's going to impact me, and I don't have any time to feel fatigued. So as soon as I start to feel that dip in energy, I start to take care of it. I start to take care of myself. And that's really where we get into that nonviolent communication with self, meaning you're listening to your body's clues and responding to them just like you would a crying baby.
Yes, I love that. Yes. Yeah. And I don't usually drink caffeine. And so all the bulletproof coffee, I talked about that before. It was like, it was about to put me over the edge, but we had late nights and early mornings. So that alone was like enough for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I need some tea or something, some water. But yeah, it was great for you to say that, because recognizing that immediately when I got home gave me that, I'm going to listen to you, because if it doesn't, what is it JJ Virgin says? If you don't listen when it whispers, your body's going to yell. It's time.
Yes,
it's time.
Totally. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
So when we're looking at this chart right here, this is for me to just show you all the things that impact that T4, the thyroid hormone that your thyroid primarily produces. So I think it's like 94%, 93% of the hormone that your thyroid produces is T4. It's not the one that our cells can use.
Right.
So 93% is T4, and it has to convert to T3. It has two routes to go. It can go to T3, or it can go to reverse T3, which you see written there as RT3. It's only the T3 that can get into the cell. So of that T4, remember, we have 93% T4, so we have 7% that the thyroid itself is making, that's T3. The T4 then needs to convert to T3. About, I think it's like only 20% goes into T3, and then it needs to get into the cell. And you can see all the nutrients here that either impact positively or negatively the processes that need to happen to get that T3 into all the cells in your body to be utilized, so that you're not having a thyroid deficiency. So all of those things need to be in check, which gives you as a health coach a lot to do right there. Look at stress and trauma. Think about your foods that have selenium, like Brazil nuts, and zinc, like oysters. What about infections? That's a later on down the line. But liver function, support for digestion is going to support the liver. Exercise. Look at all of those things that really are going to impact the ability of the body to utilize the thyroid hormones. And on this handout, and I don't know if we have a way to get this to everybody, I can make that happen. I have some other things. There's the key nutrients for each of those things right there for you. And I'll make sure you have a way to get this to everybody.
This is so helpful. I think about it, and when I teach, at the end of the week, we're going to go through my thyroid guide, and we do a really, we do a deep dive. I think I mentioned that to you, into all of this stuff. Of course, I share all the resources where people can take it even further. And one of the things I like to use as an analogy is when people ask me about reverse T3, and is that, what is it? And I think about the keyhole and the key, and the fuel is heading towards the cell and is trying to get in there, but stress and toxins and all these problems can block that keyhole, and it turns around and goes the other way. So our fuel never reaches our cells.
Right.
I think that, it's that people don't understand how that can happen in a second sometimes, how stress alone can shut that keyhole up.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
This is really great.
And I think that, I remember a relative of mine who was studying to be a nurse practitioner, and she was like, it's really interesting that you think of nutrition through the lens of chemistry. And I was like, well, it actually is chemistry that's happening in there. So if you think of this in a Sesame Street fashion, and we thought about the T4 being a tyrosine molecule with 4 iodines on it, and one of those iodines needs to be removed. Just think of it like a Sesame Street, a ring with 4 iodines on it. If the wrong one is removed from the wrong side of the ring, that's what reverse T3 is. That tiny difference in just removing the iodine from the wrong side of the ring disables the ability of that hormone to get into the cell. It's chemistry. That's what's happening in our bodies. So if we add the chemical confusion that happens when we have a lot of immune problems going on, leaky gut, that's all chemistry happening in there. The body has to deal with all that. It makes it more difficult for the hormones, which are very delicate, very subject to little imbalances, to perform at top function.
Yeah, it is one of the first things that I talk to people about is let's not talk about anything else until we figure out what kind of stress you're under. And I don't mean just you had a fight with your spouse. I'm talking about anything, good stress, bad stress, the whole thing, because that affects all of it, right?
Yes.
So we have a question from Veronica. She wants you to list those things again, like the list of things that you start with. So blood sugars first, and then...
So 2 directions here. So if we're coming at it from the always backing it up to the gut. So always, 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 we're looking at the gut function. And remember, I like to think of gut as top to bottom. Are they chewing? Are they savoring their food? And, are they eliminating properly? So think about digestion. That's one road in. There's a lot more there that I speak into in my digestive intensive teaching, in terms of what are the things we need to be talking about. But digestion, clean up the diet. From the hormone route, we have what I call a house of cards or a solar system. Blood sugar is at the base. So blood sugar management and swinging blood sugar levels, like you were talking about with your hypoglycemic episodes, that's going to impact all the hormones. So blood sugar. Then we're going to deal with adrenal stress, so cortisol, then thyroid, and then the sex hormones. So we really do need to think about the cascade and where's the base. We call that creating a cradle. So how do we create a cradle? Because if your blood sugar is swinging up and down, that's a lot of stress. So instead of mountains and ditches, we want blood sugar to do peaks and valleys after we eat. It's always going to rise and it's always going to fall, but we want it to be like if you're taking a string that's been drawn out with these highs and lows and you're pulling it so that the highs and lows are less. That's our goal.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those things. I remember when I was a little kid, and I think I was 5 or 6, and went to the chiropractor. I was not raised like a normal person, but and he tested my blood sugar because my mom was like, she spazzes out whenever she gets sugar. I don't know what's wrong with her. Like my energy would just go up and then I would act tired, right? I mean, I'm talking a little girl here. And so they did all of the blood sugar monitoring throughout the day. I mean, like, this is really like cutting edge stuff back then. And I'm 45.
Yes.
And I remember talking about the numbers, which I think is fascinating today, that the same thing is kind of replicating in my life when I'm under stress, right? But I followed that same guidance from when I was that little girl. When this started happening to me, I always have a glucometer at home. I have a treasure chest of thermometer, glucometer, blood pressure monitor. Yep. I got it out. I started doing that morning and then postprandial, and then eating specific foods, watching it. It always comes back to the normal 85, 80, 85, 79, that kind of thing. But for me, that's also an important piece, don't you think? Is having that toolbox.
Huge. We need to know what to be looking at, and it's multifactorial, which is what can make it so confusing. And I think as health coaches, we often want to fix it right away, or be the one that has the answer, and it feels like, that's what leads to our confidence. If we have the answer and we're the one that gets to have the solution. And with more complicated problems, it isn't one solution. It isn't one protocol. It's multifactorial. We need to help educate our clients and patients that it took a lifetime for them to get here. Just like you were saying, this is the point where the body is screaming. It was whispering before, and we didn't listen. And what is it we need to look at from every direction? And this is what I do with my teaching of the functional matrix. How do we look at it from different directions so that we better understand where to go next? Because it likely isn't a quick fix anymore. Right. There are some people for whom the quick fix would work. I can tell you, in our practice, we work with what I call the big bigs. Big health issues, big efforts already taken. There isn't any quick fix. Yeah. It's kind of a slow road, but it's something. Another thing that I like to tell people is that optimal health has no deadline. Like, you don't have December 31st, I will be perfectly healthy. You don't have that. We have to think about, today I'm going to manage my blood sugar so that tonight I can sleep better, so that tomorrow my cortisol is where it should be. There are very specific steps, I think, to take. So can we take a minute and let's talk about, you were just saying a few minutes ago about how you can't say heal and all that, and I provide them with, that's what this is all about. How do we safely help people? Yeah. But you said we can educate. So one of the biggest things that's going on right now, and I have several groups of probably over 3,000 coaches in all of these groups together, and I see it across the board, is fear of getting in trouble for doing or saying the wrong thing, right? So I teach people to use words like consider, or think about, or if this were me, or, take this to your doctor, like those types of words. But how do you, I don't even know how to word this. How do you teach your students to work with their clients and feel confident in what they're saying and doing? I'm sure it's probably close to what, the same delivery I have, but let me hear what you do. Maybe we can complement that. So I really think that, I don't want to say this without being accusatory, but I really think that people are using the fear of what can happen to them, or what might have happened to one person, to keep them from stepping out and doing the work. Yes, and 100%. I think that we need to take our competencies into the realm of confidence. And the only way you're going to learn is by working with people. Did I freeze?
You did, but I can hear you, but that is exactly what I think I just did a live video on this last week. I mean, I couldn't, you almost duplicated what I said. Yeah. Can you hear me? Oh, there you are. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me now?
Yep, you're back. You're back. Yeah. That's awesome.
So where was I?
You had just said, you finished by saying that the only way that we can, that we need to move forward and move past the fear and have confidence. Yeah. Yes, 100% agree with that. And I'm so glad we could do a whole webinar just based on how to move past that. I did a live video the other day and said, all of the negative talk about health coaching and how scary it is, it's not a real fear, because if you do this the right way, then you don't have to worry, and you know, you can get out there and do it. I mean, I think sometimes it can be
I really think it's keeping people from doing the important work, and the patients need you. You are their partner. You are translating something that you know. Work within your scope of practice. It might be what you know about food, and you're working with them to hold their hand through it. So what I want to say is that one of the basic tenets of functional medicine is that the practitioner and the patient work in a therapeutic partnership. And when we hear that, we celebrate the doctor. I'm tired of that. We need to celebrate the patient, and the patient needs to step up and be able to meet that practitioner as a partner. And that patient is not ready to do that without you. Exactly. You need to be the person that helps to make that patient the partner they can be in their relationship. It's not about them getting snitty and, you know, putting their hands on their hips and being mad at their doctor. It's about them being educated about their bodies, about what they put in their bodies. We are so far from understanding our physiology. We walk around with this body and we're completely in our heads about it. We don't understand that there's a vessel that's got stuff going on. And all we have to do is make some connections for people, and there's huge transformation that can happen.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the empowerment part. And, you know, to me, it's almost like, you know, if we can empower them and make them feel comfortable and confident with the knowledge that they have, when they go to their doctor, they're coming from an educated place. They're saying,
exactly,
I understand that this can affect how my gut is converting my T4 to T3. So can we talk, before you up my medication, can we talk a little bit about what I've done to make some changes to my food?
Exactly. And you make those changes. The reason why doctors all over the country consult with me is because their patients are coming in doing way better than they expected. And then the doctor is saying, what are you doing? And they're saying, I've changed things for myself. This is what I'm doing at home. And they're saying, that's fantastic. I can't do that. The doctor cannot do that work.
No.
So it's not about what they do is so great. They order labs. I want to be able to do that. It's about a whole other realm that's so sexy to be able to do, and only you can do it. So, you know, there's my call to action.
Yep.
And I just want to say, in terms of educating, because I want to make sure we get to people's questions as well, that I do have half off on the Hashi Companion. So the Girl's Guide to Hashimoto's is a program that I created for the community of people that have Hashimoto's. It was an 8-week program, really high touch, you know, in keeping with the way I offer everything. And I haven't been offering it. I didn't offer it this year because it's so high touch. It really is helping hundreds of women go through their experience. So I created the Hashi Companion, which is a physiology pod class package on each of these key areas. So these are the key areas. I'm going to share them with you. We have to look at thyroid overview. We have to look at the immune system, the digestive system, the role of gluten, the role of inflammation, adrenal health, brain and neurological health, and the role of toxins. So those are pod classes on each of those areas. And I know you have help and support in this area too, Carmen.
Yeah, this is actually a part, I've put this in my guide actually. I have put this program, it's tucked into the thyroid guide permanently. So it's a resource for them to share with their clients, or to take themselves to have a better understanding of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So my hope is that helps to educate you, to help educate your clients. Anytime I have a client who has Hashimoto's, I make sure they get their hands on this.
Yep.
And that helps us be in conversation, and then be in conversation with their doctors. So we did do a half off for you on this. It's only $67, and there's half off if you go to hashicompanion.com. I think it's /confidence. No, one. Is that one confidence? Yes.
I'm not
sure. And then use the coupon code HEALTHCOACH, all capital, one word.
Awesome.
So hashicompanion.com /confidence. And then for 50% off, so it's only $33.50. The coupon code is HEALTHCOACH, all one word, all caps.
Okay, and I'll make sure to reiterate that as well. I mean, it's a steal, seriously. And this is one of those things, and I tell people, if this is your area or this is where you're focusing, do the course, take the course, and then write it off for business, because you're learning to help your clients. I mean, 100%. So, and that's just, I mean, it's very generous of you. So very appreciated.
I really want to get this into so many people's hands. I mean, that's the best way we make change. It is with this educational piece. I think it's really important that we educate ourselves, that we educate our clients, and everything that I had to kind of, you know, there's a lot that we touched on today that might be swimming around. It's all broken down in there. You can listen, you can read it in a transcript. There's diagrams in there. It's easy to use. So yeah, I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah. And keep in mind, you know, speaking to the coaches here, keep in mind that when you work with, now my dog, your cat was talking and now my dog is talking right now. That's enough, Daisy. She's literally sitting right at my arm and she's grumbling. So I got to turn my back for just a second. That's enough. Anyway, so what I was going to say is, in the interest of remembering that we are educators, right? This is a resource that you would then share with your client, that whoever has Hashimoto's, you would say to them, there's no reason for me to spend 6 months teaching you all of these pieces of what's going on with your body. This resource right here is going to tell you everything that you need. You can learn this on your own. I'm here to support your decisions and whatever you choose to do with it, what you eat or how you know, whatever it is. But that becomes a resource for your clients, which makes you also, again, look like the expert because you're sharing that information.
Absolutely. And my goal is, you know, people aren't going to be able to afford our counseling in the same way as they might be able to afford your counseling or coaching. So the idea with my resources is that as many coaches as possible utilize them to be in a deeper conversation so that you can spend your time one-on-one coaching and not having to pull out a book on thyroid physiology and talk to them about it. I can take care of that for you.
That's awesome. It's so, here's the beauty of it. When coaches say that they feel like they don't know enough to help people, there's no excuse, because you aren't expected to know the endocrine system from top to bottom. Unfortunately, I only learned it because I walked through it. I would never have spent all of those years learning anatomy and physiology if I hadn't, you know, been undiagnosed for so long. You don't have to do that. You just simply share information that's reliable, which is what we're doing here, and let them learn about it for themselves. Veronica is asking, first Stephanie says, thank you so much. I'm getting that. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to buy it too. I'm going to buy it and I'm going to look at it for myself and just for my clients as well. And Veronica says, well, it help those with all types of thyroid problems, not just Hashimoto's.
Absolutely. And so many of thyroid problems are Hashimoto's, but yes, that thyroid physiology that I walked through in that first podcast, and again, the environment, the entire environment is impacting the thyroid. So what I've broken down in those chapters are the major areas that are impacting the thyroid. So really just looking at the whole constellation that impacts the thyroid.
Yeah. So anybody, you guys just remember, you can ask any questions you want, but I've got 2 questions. So first question is can you talk a little bit about people who have Graves and Hashimoto's at the same time?
Yeah, it's likely Hashimoto's, not Graves and Hashimoto's. So the antibodies and the thyroid can swing quite a bit, especially in the beginning. So we're going to see swinging between hyper and hypo. That was me, swinging between hyper and hypo. And we're also going to see people who manifest in ways like my dear friend and Hashi sister, Dr. Isabella Wentz. You know, she's a tiny little person, like Dr. Kelly Brogan also has Hashimoto's. These tiny, tiny little people who manifest with Hashimoto's that might look different than what we think of hypothyroid as looking. So it typically is Hashimoto's, depending on the antibody production. So we want to make sure we're testing to determine that it is Graves, and that's different antibody than Hashimoto's antibodies. So oftentimes it's classified as Graves even when it's early stage Hashimoto's, because of what it looks like instead of the appropriate testing.
Okay, so if someone has a TSI pulled, which is your Graves
Mhm.
antibody marker, and the
Yep.
TPO TGAB, someone had, I cannot even remember who it was, what doctor it was at a podcast, that had seen all of the antibodies at the same time. So TSI, TPO, and TGAB. So he then diagnosed that client or that patient of his with both.
Yes, I would actually wonder in a patient like that, what else was happening with that antibody production being downstream. So not being the primary diagnosis. So a lot of times I'll see thyroid issues that are I'll say they're a downstream, or it's a secondary to something else that's happening. I mean, it always is. Hashimoto's is a downstream to leaky gut, to genetic factors. But I would venture to say, like, why is that happening?
Right.
Because a lot of immune activity that's very confused. There's probably some other polyautoimmune situation happening that I would be looking at in that situation instead of, I mean, I can't diagnose, but my sense would be it's likely not Hashimoto's and Graves at the same time. It's something else that's manifesting in an overactive immune response that's super confused.
Yeah, very, very, that is, it's all, I mean, it can be very confusing because when most of the time, you know, do you feel, well, here's the other question. Do you feel like doctors are now starting to understand that testing for antibodies is an important piece of the thyroid puzzle? Because most of the time they will say to you, what does it matter what the antibodies say? You have hypothyroid. It doesn't matter, right?
Yes. Yes, and it does matter because it matters how we treat it or how we approach the situation. Because if it's just a thyroid issue, then we're not going to be thinking about the gut and the diet and the environment and the genetics and the infections. Like, we'd just be thinking, okay, the thyroid has an issue here. We need to address the thyroid. I make a stand for not introducing thyroid hormones when it's Hashimoto's until we've done some of the other cleanup. Now, I have Hashimoto's and I take a compounded T3, T4 hormone, but I didn't do that until I actually felt great and looked at my labs and was like, I'm still making my body work really hard, even though I feel great. So why don't I bring in a little bit of support? But when it's Hashimoto's, we want to think about the other factors, not just support the thyroid. If we bypass those other factors, the gut and the immune system, then we might actually be inciting more of an attack because the body's attacking the production of thyroid hormone. You bring in more thyroid, there might be more attacks. So I make a stand for always backing it up, not just because it's what we can do in scope, but because it's a better practice for finding root cause resolution.
Right. Great. That's a good point. So I have another question. So this is something that comes up a lot when I've worked with people who've had thyroidectomy, and I've asked them, have you had an antibody test? And they said, well, my doctor says my thyroid is gone. And I have always said, and maybe I'm wrong, you might prove me wrong, I'll have to go back and change my whole page on the guide, that it's almost impossible to take all of the tissue out, that one piece of tissue is tissue to the body, and if there's an attack that's happening, it's going to continue to happen with that small piece of tissue.
Yes.
And it's been an argument because, you know, the doctor's like, we removed it. And I'm like, well, you're still speaking and your larynx hasn't been affected and your voice box is still good. Otherwise, doesn't it affect that other, it's too intimately connected. Is that correct?
Too intimately connected. And, you know, the other things we need to start thinking about are the parathyroid gland, which is intricately impacted in how we, it's a huge player in how we manufacture our vitamin D, which is a part of our immune system, is removed when there's a thyroidectomy because it's nestled inside. It has nothing to do with the thyroid, but it's nestled inside, that there's going to be more of a likelihood of that attack because the vitamin D levels are suppressed. They're not able to do what they need to do. So you're absolutely right from my perspective that there is, and I see it a lot in clients, that there's still a Hashimoto's diagnosis despite a thyroidectomy.
Yes. Yeah. Good. Okay. That makes me feel better. I should probably just send you my guide and let you just clean it up. You have time for that. I know.
Time.
Yeah. And so Kathy's asking if you know about the oils that I've used. So Jody of Vibrant Blue Oils, of course, she has the Thyroid Accelerator. Did you get in on that beta club, that little, or the beta testing kit of hers that she gave?
No.
Yeah. So it's got the liver and the adrenal and the Thyroid Accelerator water in it. And there was one other, liver, and then the gut, of course, the small intestine. And so it, you know, is you don't have to use them all at one time. You use what works for you, and the parasympathetic oil as well for, you know, behind the ear. The Thyroid Accelerator oil, when I got back from that event, I actually started using it while I was there, because I'm like, wait, there's ever a time I need support, it's now, right? And I ended up cutting my medication literally like by, I think it was 25 micrograms, because every time I used it, I kind of felt amped up. And I don't know, it's got, you know, it's got the minerals in it and whatnot, and I have stayed at this dose, this 25 microgram dose, for quite some time now. It's been a couple months, and I use the Thyroid Accelerator a couple of times a week. Is it, you know, placebo? I don't know, but I know that there's no other, I can't tie it into anything else that's happened. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. So should I respond?
Yeah.
Okay. I love Jody's work, and I love that people use oils. It is not my scope of practice. I look at physiology. I look at what the labs are telling me. I'm for whatever works. That's what I do. I make it work. But for me, as a functional medicine nutritionist, what I rely on is our diet and lifestyle modification, the fact that we have a choice over, and those are the things that I'm using in the environment and with the diet. And I'm a huge fan of anybody on my nutrition team or any of my students using other practices that work for them. Oils are not my expertise, and I have my expertise, so I haven't really gone into what they can and can't do. If it works for somebody, I don't care what's working. I just want it to work and them to feel better.
Right. Yeah. And that's what the thing, my mom raised me in oils too. She used to do all kinds of crazy things with lavender, and she'd put weird things in my ears, like garlic and stuff. I mean,
I'm all for herbal medicine. Herbal medicine is different for me than the oils. You know, herbal medicine is something we teach. We have a whole bonus with each intensive in full body systems. And that's different for me to utilize as a practitioner. The oils, I've never really utilized them personally to great effect, but it's because it's like one extra thing to take, and it just it hasn't been in my toolbox. But I think we all need the toolbox that works for us.
Exactly. And I think it's one of those things that it can be supplemental. I mean, even if it's just that parasympathetic, you know, response comes down, that can affect the thyroid and how it functions. So I love it. I love the smell of it. It smells like, it's lime and clove, and it smells like Coca-Cola. I swear it smells like a Coca-Cola. I haven't had a Coca-Cola in probably 15 years, but it just brings, I don't know why, that's what it smells like. So let me ask you one more question. We're getting up on the time here, but Veronica is saying, what is Andrea's training? Where does she become trained as a functional medicine nutritionist?
Come to me. I will train you as a functional medicine nutritionist. So I do have a handout for everybody that is free. If you go to holisticnutritionlab.com/confidence, you will get my root cause resolution handout that really speaks to our scope of practice and how we practice root cause resolution. My training in particular is very varied. Like I said, my boot camp was my husband's illness, and really I learned a lot there. I then put myself through 5 years of post-bac pre-med, prereqs to get into a registered dietitian program. The only one I would have attended, which was at Bastyr University, the naturopathic university. I got in. As a single mama, I decided not to go because I didn't want to move my child, and I started amassing certifications. So during that time of amassing certifications, I went through Bowman College, I went through the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. I'm finishing this weekend my Master's of Science in Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine. I've been through most of the modules in the Institute of Functional Medicine, and I'll go for their certification next, but it isn't what we need. and people say to me they want to do what I did to be able to do what I do. I don't learn what I do in any of the programs I've been in. How I learn to do what I do is in practice. And really it is this renaissance melding of the physiology and, personality profiling, and really taking bioindividuality to a level that I find very meaningful in terms of how a person makes habit changes, to how their microbiome is functioning, to how they're living their everyday and what their stress levels are, like you're talking about. And it is really my own approach that I teach. That is what I call the science and the art of the functional nutrition practice. So I can't tell you how many people say to me that they want to do the training that I did, but I haven't learned what I learned to do in the training that I've done. I just take pieces of it and I put it into the little golden gems that I get into what it is that I teach in Holistic Nutrition Lab, which is where I really do teach people to do what I do. And it's really a Renaissance brain. It's thinking in systems for complex situations, which is what we're experiencing more and more with chronic health conditions, including those related to the thyroid.
Right. I've got a mini course I'm working on, of course, and it's called Getting to the Why. How do we work with complex and chronic condition clients? How do we do that in a safe way? And one of the things I always tell people is, you cannot, the best education you're going to get is experience. And so when we hold back from working with people, we're actually holding back on our education, in my opinion, because who to better learn from than someone who's got a chronic problem with all of these diagnoses that some people go, oh, I'm not qualified to help with that. You know what? You are actually going to get an entire education by helping that person, because you're going to learn about all the things that are going on with them.
Yeah, and Holistic Nutrition Lab is a full curriculum. So, if you get that root tip sheet, you will then know more about my Functional Nutrition 101 ebook. And my Reframe Nutrition Workshop series is the next in line, and it's the course where I teach into using my version of the functional medicine matrix that's been revamped for the nutrition and lifestyle practitioner, where you start to bucket things so that you can think about a complex case. Because part of the problem of thinking about a complex case is it's all there at once. It's like saying I'm training for a marathon tomorrow. And we need to be able to break it down and train our brain to think in systems. And earlier I said that one of the main tenets of functional medicine is that the patient and the practitioner work in a therapeutic partnership. Another one of the tenets is that we work in systems. We take a systematic approach. And that's what I teach you to do with the tools that I've created, like the Functional Nutrition Matrix. So it really is, it takes a systematic approach. So I just invite everybody to get their hands first on the root cause resolution tip sheet. Again, that's holisticnutritionlab.com/confidence. And Carmen, it's really what you're teaching everybody in your course is how to develop more confidence to get out there and not be scared to do the work.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, is if we hold on to our gifts, I always tell people, why are you holding your gift back from the world? You're doing this for a reason. There's a reason that you're where you are in this place of health coaching. So go out and use it. But I want to just thank you so much, you and your kitty cat. Someone made a comment on here that they were loving the background noise. I love the Siamese music in the background. I used to have them myself. They love to be involved. I think that Kim Holt, that's funny. And Bassett's apparently like to be involved too. But your time is just so valuable. And I know I just so appreciate you. And I will be sharing all of the links and information in the group, and then also plugging it into the course. And hopefully more of the students that take my course are able to take their education further and really dig into this topic. So
yeah, and kudos to you, Carmen, and to everybody here for taking this step forward. I really am excited to be with you here today and to share what I can, but it's huge steps forward just being a part of this community and getting yourself out there and practicing. So I'm excited. to
Amen
hear
to
what
that.
comes from everybody's work.
Yes, and hopefully I'll get to talk to you more next year. Maybe we'll see
Yes.
you through the next year, next summer,
I
right?
love that. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
do
And
it.
I will
Okay.
talk to you again, I'm quite sure. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.